Let us pray. Almighty and everlasting God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. We ask your blessing upon our nation, bless the work of the members of this house. May they work diligently to bring about solutions to the pressing issues of these times. Bless all the men and women across our country, especially those who work in the service of others. Today we offer special prayers for the teachers and assembly staff of our nation's schools as they resume classes today. Pray also for police, medical personnel, and members of our civil service. May all that is done this day be for your greater honor and glory, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
You ready? This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, March 28th, 2024 to be deferred. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
Minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting, the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by Your Honor the Speaker. Messages from Her Excellency the President. Petitions, papers.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Lady, audited financial report and financial statements of the Grantley Adams International Airport for the year 2020 to 2021. Also, the audited financial report and financial statements of the Grantley Adams International Airport for the year 2021 to 2022, as well as the audited financial report and financial statements of the Grantley Adams International Airport for the year 2022 to 2023. I'm also commanded to lay the loan contract number 5846 OCBA between the Government of Barbados and the Inter-American Development Bank, Climate Resilient and Sustainable Integrated Coastal Zone Management, as well as the Barbados Revenue Authority Amendment Order 2024. I'm also commanded to lay the 2022 annual report of the Department of Emergency Management.
Government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Speaker, I beg to move the first reading of the Criminal Procedure Amendment Bill of 2024, the first reading of the Stormwater Management Bill 2024, the first reading of the ICC Cricket World Cup West Indies Bill 2024, the first reading of the Visiting Police Forces ICC Cricket World Cup 2024 Bill of 2024, and to move the first reading of the Shipping Domestic Vessels Bill 2024.
Questions that the aforementioned bills be read a first time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 11, in the name of the Honourable Senior Minister, Attorney General, and Minister of Legal Affairs, to move the second reading of the ICC Cricket World Cup West Indies Bill 2024.
Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, there's another bill on the order paper, and that has to do with visiting police forces during the Cricket World Cup, and that is order number 12. Given, Mr. Speaker, that the two bills are inextricably intertwined and are both for the purpose of facilitating that tournament, I beg leave of your good self to have these matters debated in a cognate debate.
The questions that order 11 and 12 be debated as a cognate debate, given the fact that they're inextricably linked. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. Orders 11 and 12 will be debated as a cognate debate.
Mr. Speaker, in another few weeks, Barbados will be one of the host countries of the men's T20 tournament. This tournament, Mr. Speaker, has come again to the Caribbean. I believe the last time we had this good fortune was in 2010. And before that, Mr. Speaker, Barbados was proud to be a pivotal partner in the hosting of Cricket World Cup 2007. And on that occasion, Mr. Speaker, the finals was held in Barbados. Mr. Speaker, there are two people who were in cabinet at the time, the Honourable Prime Minister and myself. But even though we are the only two who were in, and I think member for St. Michael, Trevor? St. Michael East. But notwithstanding that, only a few of us were in cabinet at that time, or in parliament at that time, sir. The whole of Barbados braced for an extraordinary spectacle and an extraordinary opportunity. At that time, Mr. Speaker, we had been preparing for a Cricket World Cup for about 3 years. And I remember the absolute excitement that we had when Barbados submitted its bid book, and when the region as a whole was announced as the successful bidder for that particular games, those particular games. And the excitement that Barbados had at being awarded the finals. There is perhaps less excitement on this occasion. We've gone this way before. But notwithstanding, sir, this is a tremendous opportunity for Barbados and Barbadians. I believe, sir, that you will hear more about that during the course of this debate. You will notice, sir, that we have determined that it is in order for these two bills to be done in all of their stages in the lower house today. And that is because, Mr. Speaker, there is not so much urgency, but there is a short time left for us to put these bills in place. This is a coordinated effort, Mr. Speaker. There are 6 CARICOM member states who are the host countries for this particular tournament. And just for the fullness of the record, I remind the Chamber that these 6 are Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Guyana, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Trinidad. What we have been trying to do, Mr. Speaker, is to move in lockstep in relation to the arrangements. And of course, as long as you're looking to do something like this on a multilateral level, coordination is key. And we therefore have been, as host countries, having a series of meetings with Cricket World Cup under the aegis of CARICOM, under the aegis of our Council of Ministers of National Security and Law Enforcement, and under our Legal Affairs Committee, so that we can all make sure that we are on the same page. I said, Mr. Speaker, that we've gone this way before because in 2007 we had to do exactly the same thing, even though the requirements on that occasion were significantly broader in nature and perhaps in some respects more stringent. But the point is, this is not a tournament being hosted by Barbados alone, and therefore Barbados is able to strike out ahead. This is a tournament being hosted by 6 Caribbean countries. We know that the US is hosting games, but they don't factor into this particular discussion. And therefore, because we are hosting, because we all had to sign the identical agreement with Cricket West Indies, because we've all made the exact same commitments, it has been important for us to coordinate our efforts. And even though we are coordinating our efforts, Mr. Speaker, Barbados is first to the post. Because, well, today we are passing our legislation, my understanding that the other 5 host countries are shortly to do theirs. St. Lucia will be passing theirs on the 7th of May. Trinidad will be doing theirs next week. Antigua and Barbuda will be doing theirs next week. Barbados is ahead of the game. But even though we're ahead of the game, we're still a little bit close to the wire. Because, Mr. Speaker, the first officials who are expected to arrive in the region are expected to arrive around the 15th of May. So even though the tournament itself does not start until the 1st of June and run until the 30th of June, we're expecting officials, journalists, a whole set of people to come into Barbados, come into the region, in fact, by the 15th of May. And that, therefore, is the the time that we have set as host countries, as governments of host countries, by which we have to have everything in place. Now, it is for me, sir, to speak about the acts, the bills that we are looking to pass today, and it is perhaps for the Minister of Sports and others to speak about the other things that are being done in Barbados to facilitate Cricket World Cup. For my part, Mr. Speaker, and as Attorney General, I have had the responsibility of making sure that our security stance is fully stood up and prepared for any eventuality during the course of these games. I am proud to say, sir, that among the host countries, Barbados has taken a leadership role in trying to make sure that everybody is on the same page. It would be wrong for me, Mr. Speaker, to discuss in any detail the security arrangements that are being put in place, but among them, you can tell, there's a contemplation of the possibility of having to bring in police officers from other territories to support our efforts, but not just into Barbados. Each of the host countries will be passing identical legislation so as to facilitate us doing the same thing and sharing police resources and other resources among those 6 countries. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have to say that back in 2007, as I said, we had 3 years to prepare. We had, on that occasion, Jamaica was involved. We put a lot of robust effort into making sure that we were ready. And, sir, a lot of the things that we put in place for 2007 are happily still with us today, because at the time we did them, we understood that they were going to be important legacy benefits. And I expect that my colleagues will point out to the country and to this chamber what some of those legacy benefits will be. But in addition to the physical legacy benefits and others, there have been some legacy benefits of Cricket World Cup in the law enforcement area that continue to serve us well. The formation of CARICOM impacts, the establishment of law enforcement agencies that are specialized under CARICOM impacts, our ability to do advanced passenger information. These are things that did not exist prior to 2007, but in 2007 we were only 6 years out of 9/11, and the world was in many respects a very different place, though some will argue that we seem to have gone full circle, and perhaps we are back to the same kind of place we were in those days. So we're going to be relying on a lot of those legacy institutions to provide viable support for us during the hosting of these games. As I said, Mr. Speaker, I do not propose to, and I hope that I am not asked to, because I will respectfully decline to go into any of the security arrangements, but suffice it to say, all of our agencies are ready. Mr. Speaker, we have made sure that our agencies are fully equipped. We've made sure that in terms of manpower, that we have the best possible manpower arrangements. We have been, both the Barbados Defense Force and the police service have had the benefit of some significant specialized training, and that specialized training continues as I speak. So there are a whole set of things that happen behind the scenes that the Barbadian public might not be aware of, but I want to give the country the assurance that we have spared no expense in making sure that from a security standpoint, Barbados is ready to host our share of these games, and Barbados, without doubt, is ready to host the finals. Mr. Speaker, the first bill, what we call the Ombudsman Bill, that is before Parliament, is taken in large measure from the bill that we use across the region in 2007. And in 2007, it was a new experience for us. We needed to deal with things like ambush marketing and things of that sort, things that had never really been in our contemplation. And so we've had the benefit, Mr. Speaker, of being able to rely on a lot of that work. We've changed a few things, but it has certainly made our job easier to get to this place. Mr. Speaker, I don't know that I want to go through the 51 clauses of the bill, but let me begin by saying a few things. This is sunset legislation. And sunset legislation, I think we can all understand what it is when we use the term sunset legislation. Normally, legislation only ceases to have effect when it is repealed. But sunset legislation is the exception to that rule, and it is simply a statutory arrangement where the bill itself states that the operation of the bill, the operation of the act when passed, will end on a particular date. Cricket World Cup, Mr. Speaker, ends on the 30th of June, and therefore the very last provision in this bill says this act expires on the 30th of June 2024. So all of the matters that are covered off in this act in terms of restrictions and so on will end on that particular date. However, and I suppose this is a nice jurisprudential discussion, an offense that you commit under this act while it is enforced, and for which you might be charged while it is enforced, does not evaporate on the 30th of June. So if a person might think, man, I can break the law because it is only the law until the 30th of June, and after that, you gotta let me go because, you know, like some mysterious thing, the charge vanishes. That is not the case. The obligations that are here, if you breach them in any way, the right to be charged for them and prosecuted for them and convicted and punished for them still persists even though the legislation has come to an end. So let's put that out there. But it is sunset legislation, so what it means is that any offenses that are created under this act when passed, after the expiration of the act, they cease to be offenses. They cease to be enforced. So what is it that this act is asking for us? Mr. Speaker, the act is providing that the venue or the venues at which games are going to be held are going to be in the exclusive possession of Cricket West Indies. In clause 5 of the bill, it says, Cricket West Indies shall, for the duration of a match period, have full and unrestricted control of the stadium, so declared pursuant to section 4.1. Now in Barbados, there are 4 stadia. Those locations are Weymouth, Windward Cricket Club, the University of the West Indies, cricket grounds, and obviously Kensington Oval. So those are the venues, those are the stadia that are being referred to under this bill. So during the match period, those particular facilities are to be in the exclusive possession of Cricket West Indies. The match period is going to be declared by the minister under the provisions of section 4, the clause 4.1 of this act. So that is something to come post the passing of this legislation. But obviously the match period is expected to be 1st June to 30th June. So this bill essentially guarantees that Cricket West Indies will have unrestricted control of the stadia during the match period. It is left to others to talk about those arrangements, but I believe that the country will have been told that the various stadia will be handed over to Cricket World Cup by the middle of May. And my understanding is that we are definitely on course for that. So, given that that these 4 places will be within the exclusive control of Cricket World Cup, Cricket West Indies during the match period, what does that mean? Mr. Speaker, we have always, I suppose, had a very liberal approach to cricket. They used to call it calypso cricket, perhaps to indicate that there was not just a celebratory mood, but perhaps a lack of formality. But when it comes to this kind of game, Mr. Speaker, where hundreds of millions of dollars are being invested, then it stands to reason that the promoters are going to require that the host nation permits them or facilitates them to exploit the maximum benefit from the tournament. Those benefits include the right of advertising. So you will not be able to advertise whatever you feel like in the venues. These are events that are going to be sponsored by global companies, and they need to make sure that those rights are protected. This is standard. You know, and familiar to us, there's some when you have a promotion, a Mount Gear promotion, you can't sell one-eye man. If you get a freezer from Banks, you can't put Guinness or Corona or Caribbean in it. So really, when we talk about these things, they're not alien concepts. They're concepts that have the application in small ways, but they also have the application in larger ways. An individual who is making a significant investment wants to guarantee the return on that investment. And that guarantee requires certain assurances to be given to them. And in this context, these assurances are given by these host states in the statute. So the venues are going to be in the exclusive possession and domain of Cricket West Indies. So they have the final say. But of course, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to matters relating to law enforcement and public safety are always paramount. So our health officials, never mind that they have exclusive possession, our health officials still continue to have an overriding responsibility to not just the Barbadians, but also to the people who are going to be living and enjoying the celebration there. So the health inspectors will still have full authority. The police department will still have full authority. The fire service will still have full authority. All of our civil organizations that have a responsibility to maintain the safety and sanctity of the state and of the individuals at Cricket World Cup will have an unfettered discretion and responsibility to deal with the matters under their purview in the stadium. But that relates to their statutory responsibility to make sure that things are done in a safe way. So the point is, even though CWI will have exclusive possession, will have domain over the stadia, it is not such as excludes the civil authorities of Barbados from carrying out their job. So let there be no doubt. Cricket World Cup, that organization and its affiliates will have the right to say who can come in. In other words, in order to be a journalist or something like that, you have to be accredited. The accreditation is their responsibility. You can only come in if they sell you tickets. That is their responsibility. You can only be a concessionaire if they give you a concession. That is their responsibility. But regardless of who the concessionaire is, if the public health inspectors come and your warmers are not the right temperature, as they say in St. Lucie, crapo, smoke it pipe. So I'm just making the point, and I want to reiterate it. We are not giving up full responsibility over the facility for all purposes. They have control of the facility so that they can manage the things under their remit. But all of our civil authorities continue to have every ounce of power in relation to what goes on there, so long as it is a matter that they have control over. Mr. Speaker, sale and distribution of CWC 2024 tickets. Now, this has been a matter that has attracted some attention in the press. There are people who have been saying they've been trying to buy tickets for the longest time and they can't get them. Let us remember that the organizers of, this is their tournament, the organizers of Cricket World Cup, this T20 Blast, this is their tournament. It is not the tournament of the government of Barbados. We bid to be able to host in our facilities a number of games, including the finals. As has Trinidad for their games and other jurisdictions for their games. But it is not our games. We are the hosts of the games. And therefore, it is entirely within the power of the organizers of the games to claim the rights for tickets and so on. That is not something you can take away from them. It is their games. But they have asked us, as they did back in 2007, to give them the protection of the law so that they don't have to go through a civil process in order to prevent people from infringing certain basic rights. So they require the right to produce and distribute the tickets, their tickets. And we've been asked to, and we've agreed as we did then, to legislate that a person without written authorization of CWI cannot sell any tickets or any article that is represented to be such a ticket for admission to a CWC 2024 activity. People the world over scalp tickets. The world over people scalp tickets. Whether you're going to an NBL basketball game, a football game in Spain or in England, a concert in Kensington Oval, people scalp tickets. They scalp tickets in Barbados for our shores. For our show, they're sure they're going to scalp some for Reggae Weekend this weekend. This statute is intended to protect the organizers of Cricket World Cup by prohibiting in law scalping and things of that sort. But it also prevents people from buying tickets and offering them as raffles, as prizes in raffles, things of that sort. And it is understandable, as I said, sir, we've gone this way before. There are a number of other arrangements that have to be made, Mr. Speaker. Hundreds, if not thousands, of people are going to be coming into Barbados to work during Cricket World Cup. To work during Cricket World Cup. There will be journalists, there will be photojournalists, there will be medical personnel, there will be physiotherapists, there will be coaches, there might even be some religious support staff, I don't know. But when these teams travel, they travel with a huge entourage, many of whom will be working. Barbados will be the place that they're working from. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we have committed, as we did then, that in instances where people will require work permits, that those work permits are going to be facilitated. I don't think there could be any issue at all with that. In relation to import and export duties, again, this is standard. A lot of things are going to be coming in. There will be sponsors who have special energy drinks for the team, special vitamin supplements. There might be people on a special diet bringing in medical supplies. They're obviously bringing in sporting equipment, a whole set of stuff, and so as to facilitate the games, as we did back in 2007, and as was done under the Democratic Labour Party when they hosted the games in 2010. All of these things are facilitated free of duties and so on. Again, or naturally, where income is derived by certain people, we call them designated persons in this bill, a person who is not ordinarily resident in Barbados, those persons are exempted from tax. And again, Mr. Speaker, as I said, we've gone this way before, and designated persons are identified in the bill. I'm not going to read the long list of designated persons, but it says IBC, ICC, CWI, and their respective employees, consultants, officials, agents, and representatives. Again, makes perfect sense. They're coming into Barbados for a few days for the purposes of these games, and they're moving from island to island to island to island. It will be virtually impossible if for every island, for the 8 or 9 days that they spend the island, they had to get work permits. If every island, they had to register for income tax or corporation tax, and then tax administration is trying to figure out, well, how much of that is attributable to Barbados and how am I going to get it? Apart from the administrative nightmare, it just makes good sense, Mr. Speaker. These are things that we do in a larger way in the tourism sector. We've done that for many kinds of investments. This Cricket World Cup is narrow in scope, and there should be no objection at all to that. The bill goes on, Mr. Speaker. It deals with entry into the facility. Unauthorized entry, unless authorized by CWI, no person shall during a match period enter or be present in or on any part of the playing field, any other part of a stadium, if it is indicated that entry into that part is not permitted. Any part of any other CWC 2024 venue, if it is indicated that entry into that part is not permitted. Again, Mr. Speaker, common sense and practical things that we've put in place. I imagine that there are a few members of the particular club that has its home at Kensington Oval, and as happened on the last 2 occasions when we had Cricket World Cup, those membership entitlements are suspended. So, but again, there's been I think everybody accepts that that is standard and the way to go. So I don't anticipate there should be any pushback from that particular requirement. Clause 17 of the bill stipulates the kind of behavior that is not permitted during the match period or in any CWC 2024 venue. There's a whole list of them. You can't erect any structure or any display or sign or banner or any other thing unless authorized by CWI. You can't block any stair, steps, side, aisle, gangway unless authorized by CWI. You can't throw any stone, bottle, or missile or use any dangerous object. You can't misuse, deface, damage, or tamper. So, Mr. Speaker, all of these are perfectly standard things, and arguably they are to be located in other parts of the laws of Barbados. But given the narrow focus of this game, it is eminently sensible to have these provisions all encompassed here so that you don't need to be wondering where the law is or what particular law applies. Mr. Speaker, in relation to sale of goods or services, this is often a problem, or it is often things that we agitate about. Everybody wants to be able to come in and sell, not permitted. Again, these are the rights of the organizers of the game, and that's why we go back to saying at the beginning of the bill that they have exclusive possession of the venue. So no person shall, without the written authorization of CWI, hawk, sell, offer, or display for sale, or to distribute to members of the public any goods, services, flyers, or pamphlet, collect money or orders from members of the public for goods or services in the CWC 2024 venue during a match period. So you can't do it without the written authorization of CWI. This is what permits them to determine who the concessionaires are going to be and what kind of activity takes place within the cricket venue. So, Mr. Speaker, there's provision for control of advertising, again, to stop ambush marketing. So, essentially, they have their trademarks, and they want to ensure that those trademarks are protected, and therefore, people shall not in section 25, it says, except with the written authorization of CWI, a person shall not willfully broadcast, display, make, or publish any advertisement, statement, mark, or image which relates to or is connected with CWC 2024. Ambush marketing, Mr. Speaker, is simply where a third party uses the trademarks of another person to associate that person with his goods. So, I have to make up something. So suppose we had a particular brand of beer. And that particular brand of beer wants to benefit from the hype and glamour of the CWC logo. They can't put their logo on their beer bottle. They can't associate the trademarks of CWC and this tournament with their particular thing, with their particular product by adding it into their ads. That's ambush marketing. So these are the things that are prohibited in the context of CWC. Mr. Speaker, on the last occasion that we had Cricket World Cup, we had various restrictions in relation to what could be brought into the stadium. We have met with Cricket World Cup, and they've said to us that they're going to change up the list of things, a list of restricted items. So in the stadium, Mr. Speaker, there are things that are prohibited. On the last occasion, they had a total of 13 items that were absolutely prohibited. On this occasion, they have said we can be flexible. That list is now down to 10. However, the restricted items, on that occasion, the list of restricted items numbered 15 items. On this occasion, the list of restricted items numbers only 5. On the last occasion, these items were restricted, and I don't want to bore the chamber with all these things, but bands and musical instruments, they were restricted on the last occasion. And I think everybody would remember in 2007, a well-known teacher and musician who pretty much spearheaded the entertainment and cheering section in Kensington Oval during international games, complained bitterly that the spirit of the games would be lost because the drums and the trumpets and so on and bugles and so on that we're accustomed having in the games, those things could not get into Kensington Oval. It created a tremendous amount of furor. As I said, on that occasion, there were 15 things that were not allowed, that were on the restricted items list. So as I said, there's a prohibited list, so certain things you can't bring in. So just for completeness, you can't bring in animals other than service animals. You can't bring in bicycles. You can't bring in commercial, video, photographic, or audio equipment. Can't bring in compressed gas canisters or other flammable items. Can't bring in dangerous items or weapons. Can't bring in drones or unmanned aerial vehicles. You can't bring in glass bottles or metal cans. You can't bring in narcotics other than prescribed. You cannot bring in offensive or political signage, so I guess the member for Christchurch South will be very happy to know that members of his party will not bring in ads asking for his removal. It's not allowed. They're not going to let it come into CWC, and I support that.
All right. We need him there.
And anything to help out a drowning man. Anything to help out a drowning man. You're not allowed to bring in promotional or commercial material. That's the list now. In relation to restricted items, the restricted items are coolers, lunch boxes larger than 30 by 30 by 30 centimeters. So you can bring in coolers of a small kind. So if it is larger than 30 by 30 by 30 centimeters, then can't bring it in. You cannot bring in folding chairs that are not intended for the mount. So we know we're gonna have mounts, so you can bring in folding chairs for there, but you can't bring in folding chairs to put in the aisles. You cannot bring in large banners and flags or flag sticks above 1.6 meters in length. So anything smaller, you can bring in and wave and enjoy yourself, but anything bigger than that, you can't. You cannot bring in musical instruments that cannot fit under your seat or on your lap, or that is louder than 70 decibels. So, bring in the bugle, bring in the trumpet. The tuba, you have a bit of a problem. All right? But the smaller musical instruments, you can bring it in. And you cannot bring in tents or umbrellas that are not intended for the mount. So I think it is fair to say that CWI has worked with us to try to make sure that we can have games that are reflective of the Caribbean spirit and that are not going to be a sterile exercise in bat and ball, but something that will be supported and undergirded by who we are. And I think that is, I have to pay them credit for that. Mr. Speaker, I mentioned earlier the tickets, and I neglected to say, and I have to give the Prime Minister credit. In fact, the entire region has expressed tremendous gratitude for the Prime Minister for her intervention on the matter of cricket tickets. When we met in Georgetown at the heads meeting, and I'm not a head, I was just I went along with. Cricket World Cup had said all of our tickets are being sold online. That's that. And it was a source of tremendous pride, not just me as a member of the Barbados delegation, but to all of the CARICOM member states. And I've heard people, they even post on social media paying tribute to her about it. The Prime Minister said to Cricket World Cup, that cannot work. Everybody is in the Caribbean is not able to handle things online. Everybody doesn't have a credit card. Everybody doesn't have the facility with the online purchases. And therefore, in Barbados, I'm going to insist that you have physical box offices so that people can go and stand up in a line and do what they've been doing for years. Come and buy a ticket and have a ticket in the hand, to put it in the pocket, put it in the top pocket, in the wallet, and they feel good, and they know they have a ticket for cricket. I have constituents who will want to go to cricket, Mr. Speaker, and I can't guarantee them that they will get one from the box office, but the line might be real long. But we can be fairly sure that if they're required to go in the online environment to purchase a ticket, they may simply not get one. They may not get one because they might not be able to enter all the information. They may not have a credit card. They may not. I have constituents like that, so I know that you do as well. So the way to satisfy that particular interest group is to insist that physical tickets be made available for sale at the box office in Barbados, and that was where we drew the line in the sand. Cricket World Cup, Cricket West Indies made the concession and said, okay, we will do it. They have agreed to start out with 500 tickets. And while we know that 500 tickets is a drop in the bucket, they've agreed that based on ticket sales, that they will put more, if possible, into the physical box office to be available for local populations. Barbados having staked that claim, the other countries followed suit, and CWI agreed that similar arrangements will be made for each of the 6 member states. And therefore, while it is not a huge amount of tickets, it is still going to be possible for Barbadians to go and stand up in a line and purchase a physical ticket for the box office. As I said, Mr. Speaker, this bill is easy to commend because we've covered this ground before. I suppose I have to admit that it is, in fact, a signal honor to have been the AG responsible for it back in 2007, and I didn't know that it would come back to me. Happily, it didn't come back to haunt me, because we did a good job back in 2007, and we had no issues at all, and I'm happy to commend this particular bill to the Chamber as being adequate to satisfy our obligations to CWI and our obligations to Barbados and Barbadians, and to say to Barbadians that, in my respectful view, and I believe the view of the entire of this government, this bill correctly balances the interests of the organizers of the tournament with the interests of Barbadians who are hosting the tournament. The other bill, Mr. Speaker, is visiting police forces. I can say, Mr. Speaker, fairly safely that I think it's common knowledge that every country in CARICOM as a whole will not be at the same place in terms of security preparation or security readiness or even security capacity. That is standard. That is standard. If you think about it, Mr. Speaker, Barbados has just around 1,300 police officers. Guyana has about 4,500 police officers and another 2,000 or 3,000 auxiliaries. Guyana. But Guyana has a vast geographical territory. So and the population is also 3 times the size of ours. So you can understand that multiplying our population size by 3 and multiplying their police size by 3 is not a practical way of approaching it. They have a much greater geography. Trinidad, a much bigger population, a much bigger police service, much bigger army. But on the other hand, Mr. Speaker, we have smaller countries in the OECS. We have St. Vincent, we have St. Lucia, we have Antigua and Barbuda. I think I'm missing somebody. St. Vincent. Those countries, they're smaller than we are, smaller than Barbados is. They have smaller police forces, they have fewer resources available. But the fact is, Mr. Speaker, that we are only as strong as the weakest link. And while Barbados is not the strongest link, we are certainly not the weakest link either. And it is important, therefore, for us to make sure that the games hosted among these 6 member countries, hosted by these 6 member countries, are able to go off without any hitches. You see, sir, if there is a problem in Antigua, then the entirety of the games is disrupted. So we don't get to say, well, man, no, the Barbados games Barbados games good, we can be all right, but the ones in St. Lucia get disrupted because of some criminal element. You know that St. Lucia's having some serious challenges with homicides and so on, and there's some instability. We've had to support them by sending police officers in previously. And if there's a serious problem in St. Lucia, it will not just affect St. Lucia, it will affect the entire viability of the tournament in every way. And therefore, it is incumbent on us to make sure that even the weaker links are shored up. And while I said Barbados is not the strongest link and not the weakest link, we've had occasion in Barbados to require forces from overseas to come into Barbados. I remind you of when Glenderry was burned, and we had that situation of instability there. We did not have enough police officers to be able to undertake the regular policing duty of Barbados and still deal with the tragedy and the difficult situation that was happening at Glenderry. On that occasion, we brought in troops from overseas under the aegis of the RSS, the Regional Security System. But what we've put in place among the host countries is an arrangement, just as we did last time for the Cricket World Cup 2007, for visiting police forces to come in to support efforts. Now, the games are not all being played at the same time. Different issues are going to arise, but it was felt back then, and we still feel it is important to ensure that the opportunity to bring in police officers from overseas is dealt with in a structured fashion. It is dealt with under the law so that what requirements are there are, first of all, common among all the states, and also easy to spot, easy to see, we know what they are. So when if police officers, and we didn't require any during 2004, 2010, 2007 to 2010 tournaments, but it is possible, sir. And we see that with the instability happening in the Middle East and in other places, there's a possibility of risk to us. And we have to guard against that risk. And therefore, this visiting forces bill is one that will establish clearly what the rights and obligations are of visiting police forces if they're needed. If they're needed and they come in, they are under the jurisdiction of the Commissioner of Police. So if we brought in police from Jamaica, if we brought in police from Trinidad, St. Lucia, wherever it is, to support our police officers, they're not coming in to function under their own command. They'll be coming in to function under the directions of our Commissioner of Police. And the bill says at 7.1 that while on duty in Barbados, that person or those persons will perform the same duties under and in accordance with the directions of the Commissioner or Commissioner in the same manner and in all respects as if he were a member of the police force. There are immunities that are here. These are standard, notwithstanding Section 7.2, the members of a visiting police force shall be immune from prosecution in criminal court proceedings in Barbados in respect of actions taken in the course of their official duty. I think it's important to repeat that, sir. They have this immunity in respect of actions taken in the course of their official duties. Now, Mr. Speaker, this provision and this kind of legislation is found globally. So this is not a Barbados concoction. There's ample precedent across the globe for protection of visiting forces, whether those are visiting police forces or whether those are visiting troops, visiting military troops, sir. And these kind of protections and immunities and so on are absolutely standard. And you know, the important thing is that we hope we don't need them, but if we do need them, we have to have it. Now, Mr. Speaker, in another 2 weeks, we're going to be hosting Trade Winds. And Trade Winds is an operation. Well, I think everybody knows what Trade Winds is by now. It is where the Southern Command of the U.S., in conjunction with regional military forces, do exercises in the region. And so we will have visiting forces coming in. And those visiting forces get the same kinds of immunities. So there's ample precedent for this. This is nothing that is unusual, nothing that is concocted. Now, sir, I make the point that I hope we don't need to use it. And we are preparing ourselves to make sure that the Barbados Police Service, together with the ample support from the Barbados Defense Force, will be able to handle any eventuality. But if we need it, Mr. Speaker, we have a statutory basis for bringing in that policing support and for establishing a legislative framework under which they will operate. The final thing that I will want to mention, and it is not in legislation, but it is associated with what we're doing, and it has to do with the mutual recognition of visas. The visa framework across the 6 host countries is not the same. As you know, Mr. Speaker, visas operate, and the visa arrangements tend to operate on the basis of reciprocity and other factors. And so, for example, an Australian does not need a visa to come to Barbados. But an Australian needs a visa to go to Guyana. An Australian needs a visa to go to Trinidad. On the other hand, somebody coming in from Afghanistan will need a visa to come to all the CARICOM states. Somebody coming in from Oman will need a visa for all the CARICOM states. Pakistan will need a visa for most, if not all. India will need a visa for some, but not others. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are obviously going to anticipate the cricketing nations that are participating in the tournament to have followings, but then there are going to be other people from other territories, other jurisdictions, who want to come into the host countries for the purpose of cricket as well. When we hosted Cricket World Cup in 2007, Mr. Speaker, as I said, we had a long lead up, and we were able to put a CARICOM visa in place. On this occasion, having been notified that we were being considered for the games around the middle of last year or early last year, I think, and then to have the bids and so on being submitted last year, there was absolutely no opportunity to put a CARICOM visa arrangement in place. That CARICOM visa arrangement was extraordinarily complex. It was very expensive. We had to station officers all over the world, basically, to be able to facilitate the CARICOM visa. It had to have special security visas, special security characteristics. It had to be specially created with those security characteristics and so on. Then you had to figure out how we were going to pay for it and who was going to administer it. We simply had no time to put that kind of arrangement in place. So, what do? Obviously, it is a tremendous disincentive for a traveler to come to watch cricket in multiple countries, to have to apply for a visa for each one. Think about it. Somebody from I don't know, Pakistan, coming into the region and to be told they want to watch cricket, but they got to get visas for all six of the host countries. That is not only a cost, but it is a process. And we recognize that it will be a disincentive for travelers. And in the circumstances, Mr. Speaker, we determined that the best mechanism to address the situation would be for us to mutually recognize each other's visas during that period. Now remember, Cricket World Cup, the tournament is 1st June to 30th June, but I mentioned to the chamber earlier that people will be coming into Barbados from as early as the 15th of May. And therefore, whatever visa arrangements we put in place have to be available from the 15th to facilitate travel for the 15th of May. Now, what we are saying by mutual recognition is that if you require a visa to come to one of the host countries, if you also require visas to travel to other of the host countries, then the visa for the one will be recognized by the other 5 countries. I used the example of Australia earlier. Australians don't require visas to come to Barbados, but they require visas to go to Trinidad and to go to Guyana. So a cricketer or a fan from Australia who is coming through the region, they stop in Antigua first, they're good. They stop in Barbados first, they're good. No visa required. But he wants to go to watch the game tomorrow in Trinidad. He needs a visa for Trinidad. Now, the fact that he came into Barbados and didn't need one doesn't help him in Trinidad. He needs a Trinidad visa. But if he also plans to go to Guyana, all that we're saying is, when he has that visa for Trinidad, Guyana will say, Mr. Brown, you have a visa for Trinidad. You do not need to get a separate visa from Guyana. We will recognize that visa. Now, Mr. Speaker, that does not mean that the Guyanese immigration officer will let you in, because we all know that the fact that you have a visa does not guarantee a right of admission. There are people who have visas to the U.S., and when you land in the U.S. Border Control tell you, I know you got a visa, but I ain't letting you in. And under standard international law, under standard domestic law, that is the right of any immigration authority. But what we are saying is, as long as you've applied for a visa for us, as long as an Australian applies for a visa for Trinidad, he does not need to apply also for a visa for Guyana. The Guyanese authorities will recognize and respect that visa issued by Trinidad as being applicable to Guyana. I hope that that makes it clear. So we're going to recognize each other's visas for the purposes of Cricket World Cup. But it is an obvious thing, so let me address it. People will be coming who want to do cricket. Somebody may have already, some Australian might have planned to come to Australia and Guyana because they want to look for oil or something, not out doing cricket. They may not even like cricket. What do we do during this period? Same thing. Same thing. Because it will create an artifice if you say to a fellow says, well, I come in for cricket. You say, all right, come. I come in to fed. Don't come. It don't make any sense. So during this period, mutual recognition of visitors among the host countries will be applied to all visa requiring travelers, simply because it makes no sense trying to disaggregate them. Okay? We think that this system is going to be effective, and therefore our regulations have been prepared, and again, commonality across the 6 countries, and therefore across the 6 countries, Mr. Speaker, the same kind of regulation will be applied. Mr. Speaker, this Games coming in June represents a tremendous opportunity for us. It will boost our tourism arrivals. It will boost the expenditure in Barbados, in the region, on food, entertainment, drinks, taxi men, everything. It is costing us to host these games. I remember in the last year or so, somebody said, well, Oinafa spent, rest his soul, Oinafa spent $200 million on Cricket World Cup and we ain't get it back yet. Those are the kinds of arguments that some will make. Some will make those kinds of arguments. But I venture, Mr. Speaker, that the investment that we made for CWC in 2007, and on which the last administration not just built, but relied when they hosted the games in 2010, continue to serve us. Some of those legacy arrangements, I said, that was included in the $200 million, had to do with our legacy security arrangements that continue to serve us well today. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand here not being the biggest of cricket fans, but being an ardent supporter of anything, Mr. Speaker, that provokes or causes Barbadians to take certain steps to improve that which we have. I support these games. I support, Mr. Speaker, the tremendous benefit that will accrue to Barbadians both directly and indirectly. And I commend these 2 pieces of legislation to this chamber wholeheartedly and ask that they receive the support of this parliament. I'm obliged.
Honourable Member, you have to move Art 11 first.
Beg to move. Sorry. I beg to move, Mr. Speaker, that the ICC Cricket World Cup, let me just give you the exact title. The ICC Cricket World Cup West Indies Act 2024 be read a second time. Second.
Next second.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move. Oh, okay.
Honourable member for Christchurch South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I trust you and all of my colleagues had a pleasant Easter. Your Honor, I think the Honourable Member for St. Joseph, the Honourable Attorney General, just made a very significant confession that he is not a cricket fan. Beg your pardon? Oh, not a big cricket fan. He's a small cricket fan. He's not a big cricket fan. One would not have thought that someone of our generation would find it possible, being Barbadian, not to be a big cricket fan. And that's a matter of some regret. But of course,